Blessed day, ladies and gentlemen. So at this moment, let's tackle what exactly is social movement. So without further ado, let's begin.
So, what is social movement? Social movement is an organized effort by a significant number of people to change some major aspect or aspects of society. Social movement is one of the major form of collective behavior. So, social movements include two characteristics about which there is considerable agreement among the sociologists. First, social movement undoubtedly involves collective action. However, this collective action takes the form of a movement only when it is sustained for a long time. This collective action need not be formally organized. It could be an informal attempt also, but it should be able to create an interest and awakening in relatively large number of people. Second, social movement is generally oriented towards bringing about social change. This change could either be partial or total. Though the movement is aimed at bringing about a change in the values, norms, ideologies of the existing system, efforts are also made by some other forces to resist the changes and to maintain the status quo. So social movements are purposeful, organized groups striving to work toward a common goal. So these groups might be attempting to create change, to resist change, or to provide a political voice to those otherwise disenfranchised. Social movements play a very important role in highlighting some of the social problems. Some undesirable conditions can exist for years or even centuries before they are recognized as social problems, like slavery, the subordination of women, the untouchability, the racial discrimination, communalism, poverty, inequality, pollution, etc., were all generally regarded as either as natural or inevitable, or as less important until social movements drew the attention of the public, mobilized public opinion, and campaigned for change. The degree of success of social movement determines not only how the social problem is confronted, but also what happens to the movement itself. Social movements do not necessarily bring solutions to the social problems. They may champion the cause of social problems, but cannot always promise a lasting solution. Social movements may promise to bring about social change, and they do bring it, but it is not a one-way process. Not only the social movements bring about change, but social change sometimes gives birth to movements. As the saying goes, change is the law of nature. What is today shall be different from what it would be tomorrow.
Good day everyone, I'm Denbergen B. Palima and today I'll be discussing to you about sectoral movements. So first, what is sectoral movement? Sectoral movement is defined as the relative variation of a regional gross value added in the primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors. So there are 5 types of sectoral movements, and I'll be discussing to you 3 of them, and the rest is Edmar Canedo. So the first is labor movement. Labor movement is a social movement of workers and farmers led by the middle class illustratus and social intellectuals. The labor movement is composed of labor organizations like trade unions, farmers associations, cooperatives, and other sectoral and people's organizations, often called by non-government organizations or NGOs. The trades of union movement, while comprising only 10% of the labor force, is the most organized and active component of labor movements. The second is indigenous people. The indigenous people movement is vibrant and widespread across the Philippines. There are a large number of national and local organizations working for their rights. Given the particular discriminations that they are encountered, there are groups especially working upon indigenous women's issues. And because they will be in the future of any indigenous movement, and there is the focus on indigenous youths. The third is child movement. Child movements provides education, training opportunities, and child rights advocacy for the most vulnerable and impoverished children of the Philippines. giving them the opportunity to free themselves for the risk of abuse and exploitations and to create safer, brighter future of themselves and their families.
Hi, I am Edmar Canedo, and I will going to continue the report of Mr. Denver Palima about the five types sectoral movement. Overseas Filipino, as the Migrant Workers Law or MWL, this is a report on Filipino migrant workers, and unless specified otherwise, the term migrant workers refers to Filipino migrant workers and is used throughout. The term migrant workers refers to those covered by overseas work contracts processed by the Philippine government or those commonly known as Overseas Filipino Workers or OFW or Overseas Contract Workers or OCW, and to a certain extent, unauthorized workers not legally deployed but affected by the same or similar problems as regular workers and therefore entitled to or to stand to benefit from improved government systems for the delivery of services to migrant workers. Urban poor. We are living in what is often described as the urban century. Most of the world's economy and more than half its population are now in urban areas. The world continues to urbanize and most of the growth in the world's population is in urban areas in low and middle income countries. Urban poverty refers to the set of economic and social difficulties that are found in industrialized cities and that are the result of a combination of processes such as the establishment of comfortable living standards, the increase of individualism, processes of social fragmentation and dualization of the labor market, which translates into social dualization.
Feminism movement. The first attempts to organize a national movement for women's rights occurred in Seneca Falls in New York on July 1848. It led by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, a young mother from upstate New York, and the Quaker abolitionist Lucretia Mott. About 300 people, most of whom were women, attended the Seneca Falls Convention to outline a direction for the women rights movement. The impact of feminism. So, feminism had a major and long lasting impact on society, affecting and enhancing the lives of women and girls in the United States and across the world. So, feminism has addressed and challenged societal inequalities, addressing the intersecting impacts of gender, race, class, culture, religion, sexual orientation, and disability, as well as pointing to a large number of other situations of unfairness and oppression. Feminism has provided Western women with increased educational opportunities, the right to vote, protection against workplace discrimination, and the right to make personal decisions about pregnancy. So, in some communities, feminism has also succeeded in challenging pervasive cultural norms about women. So, what did the feminist movement accomplish? Feminism changed women's lives and created new world for possibilities for education, empowerment, working women, feminist art, and feminist theories. What is the LGBT movement? So the LGBT movement can be identified as a new social movement because it focuses primarily on the rights of the LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. It is a social movement that advocate for LGBT people in society. Social movements may focus on equal rights, such as the ongoing movement for same-sex marriage, or they may focus on liberation, as in the gay liberation movement of the 1960s and 1970s. The purpose of the LGBTQ movement is gay rights movement, also called homosexual rights movement or gay liberation, civil rights movement that advocates equal rights for gay, men, lesbian, bisexual, and transgenders. Person seeks to eliminate sodomy laws, barring homosexual acts between consenting adults, and calls for an end of discrimination. LGBT movements organized today are made up of a wide range of political activism and cultural activity, including lobbying, street marches, social groups, media art, and research. Not only does the LGBT community strive for their rights, they also celebrate as well.
So first, let's talk about what is faith-based. When we say faith-based, it means an organization, association, facility, or program that offers services within a context of religious belief. And when we say faith-based organization, it is a term which has originated from the United States of America and is being used to refer to religious organizations, social welfare services. A faith-based organization may be defined as a group of individuals united on the basis of religious or spiritual beliefs. And traditionally, faith-based organizations have directed their efforts toward meeting the spiritual, social, and cultural needs of their members. So next is the rules of faith-based organizations in promoting social change. So first is, given that faith-based organizations are the community-based organizations found in many countries, as well as the fact that they are closer to the grassroots or the poor, so they are said to make a positive and outstanding contribution to the achievement of poverty reduction, which brings changes to lives and societies. So their image as a prophetic voice and an altruistic institution that propound and execute moral values have made people to trust in them and encourage donors and volunteers to give their resources and manpower respectively to the FBOs or the faith-based organizations, knowing that their financial and physical support will go serve the needy, so thereby helping to improve and change behaviors, cultures, and beliefs that stood as a bulwark to human development and human dignity, subsequently bring about necessary change in the society. So the second one is the FBOs or the faith-based organization have comparative advantage in societies where religion is important here. So they can easily use their spiritual endowment and charitable gestures to effectuate change in society. So I'll give you one example. I will use one organization which I work as an example for it. So actually our religion had a lot of faith-based movement, but I will use the organization which I work for. So this is the International Child Care Ministry or the ICCM. It offers a scholarship and sponsorship from grade school to college to the children who are less fortunate. So the family that involves to this project came from different religion. And every Sunday we have a cell group to share the word of God, but we are not forcing them to be with our religion. So with this program, it helps shape the life of every individual, especially to the children's. So the third one is faith-based organizations are very important because they come into close certain gaps and fill in loophole left by the state. So they are very relevant in the community because they facilitate community activities by offering services that goes to serve general interest. So one of the services that offers by the faith-based organization is the opening of nursery school or the schools. Just like for example, without nursery schools to look after children of working parents, it would have been difficult for such parents to go to work. So this I suggest or would have been a hindrance to parents who will have to stay away from work to look after their children. Absenting from work will have economic and social impact on the families concerned and society as a whole in that. So parents will not be able to pay for necessary goods and services which will in turn have an impact on their lifestyle and on taxes which goes to sponsor state projects. But with the help of faith-based organization, such needs are met and people can work and have the possibility to live their lives, evolve, and also be able to pay taxes needed by the state to be able to run its affair. So next is the impact of faith-based movements to the following. So first is the political aspect. Faith-based organization works to see that governments met their responsibilities towards citizens. So, as a prophetic voice, it speaks out on behalf of the voiceless in society and sought to maintain human dignity. So, it means that faith-based organization aim to ensure that governments fulfill their obligation to the citizens, and it speaks up on behalf of the voiceless in society and strive to safeguard human dignity as a prophetic voice. So the second one is the economic aspect. So faith-based organizations are offering employment, education, and training which empower people financially, helping them to evolve both economically and socially. So faith-based organization provides these jobs, educations, and training to people, empowering them financially and allowing them to progress both economically and socially. So the third one is the social aspect. So faith-based organizations provides both material and immaterial support to the needy and marginalized in society, so enabling them to improve and live a better life. So it means faith-based organization help the poor and marginalized in society by providing both the material and non-material assistance, allowing them to improve and live a better life.
Good day everyone, I am Kaina Chrislyn Simon Gubat, and what I'm gonna report or discuss to you is all about ecological movement from social movements and its impact. To tell you what is ecological movement, is also called as environmental movement, wherein a social political movement mainly concerning with the conservation of this environment and the improving of the state of the environment. This is relating to the science of ecology or the patterns of relationships between living things and their environment. This centered on ecology, health, and human rights. It is also a type of social movement that involves an area of persons, groups, and coalitions that observe a common interest in environmental protection and act to bring about changes in environmental policies and practices. Environmental movements are understood to be very diverse and complex. Their organizational forms ranging from the highly organized and formal institutionalized to the radically informal. We have the features of ecological movements. 1. It includes conservation and green politics. 2. It is a diverse scientific, social, and political movement for addressing environmental issues. 3. Protect natural areas for sustainable consumption and traditional and spiritual use, like hunting or trapping. 4. It involves in conserving the natural aspects of the environment. Examples are reforestation, recycling, and pollution control. 5. It focuses the idea that natural spaces such as forests and rivers are not just raw materials for economic development. They are aesthetic too. 6. Environmental conservation through movements tries to maintain the natural quality of life. 7. It also focuses on urban standards like clean water, efficient sewage handling, and steady population growth. 8. Environmental health movements also deal with nutrition, preventive medicine, aging, and etc. Lastly, we have the ecology movement could involve the interaction between human, science, and responsibility. To tell you the growth of the environmental movement in the 1960s and 1970s. Rachel Lois Carson was an American marine biologist, writer, and conservationist whose influential book Silent Spring and other writings are credited with advancing the global environmental movement. She was known for her writings on environmental pollution and the natural history of the sea. Her book Silent Spring 1962 became one of the most influential books in the modern environmental movement and provided the impetus for tighter control of the pesticides. Many historians find the publication of Rachel Carson's Silent Spring in 1962 to be an appropriate indicator for the start of the modern American environmental movement. In the decade of 1960s and 1970s, the environmental movement concentrated its attention on pollution and successfully pressured Congress to pass measures to promote clean air and water. In the end of 1970s, the movement progressively addressed environmental threats created by the disposal of toxic waste. That's all and thank you.
Various liberation movements of the 1960s and 1970s exerted influence in the development of new strands of human geographic concern with injustice. Environmentalism spawned analysis of the unfair burden of pollution, ecological degradation, and desertification. Good day, everyone. I'm Isabella Sierra Orsini, one of the reporter of Group 4. Today, I'll discuss about liberation movements. So now, what is liberation movements? Liberation movement is a type of social movement that seeks territorial independence or enhanced political or cultural autonomy or rights of various types within an existing nation state for a particular national, ethnic, or social group. The liberation movement extended to or adopted by the types of group because of discrimination they've got from society or people. The National Liberation Movement is a diverse socio-political movement which share the aim of establishing an independent state for what they consider their nation within the borders of territory recognized by international community. It is a revolutionary movement that seeks the national independence of a country. So what is the purpose of liberation movement? It is an organization or political movement leading a rebellion or non-violent social movement against a colonial power or national government, often seeking independence or to free themselves from various forms of dominant and discrimination based on a nationalist identity and an anti-imperialist outlook. How liberation movement arise for the same reason and social movement emerged. Widespread grievance plus a pre-existing collective identity, a political empowerment or efficacy, a political context that facilitate collective action. However, nationalist or ethnic identities may be more an outcome than the initial cause of liberation movement. There are three key features of liberation movements. First, liberation movements are characterized by simultaneous democratic and authoritarian impulses. Second, liberation movements have become the vehicle for rapid class formation. Third, there are a constant tension between liberation movement commitment to the liberal constitutionalism by which they acceded to power and their aspiration to monopoly dominant of society. These are the examples of liberation movements. Gay liberation movements, a movement that urged lesbian and gay to engage in direction, action, and to be proud of their sexuality. Goa Liberation Movement, a movement which fought to end Portuguese colonial rule in Goa, India. Men's Liberation Movement, a social movement critical of the restraints which society improves on men. Women's Liberation Movement, a movement of women who propose that economic, psychological, and social freedom were necessary for women to be equal. Animal Liberation Movement, a movement to stop killing animals for human needs.
Blessed day, ladies and gentlemen. So, at this moment, let's discuss what is working with men. So, working with men are a collection of social, political, and philosophical organizations that seek to redefine men's relationship to their prescribed gender roles. So, although male centered organizations have existed throughout history, the organizations usually referred to us, men's movement begin in the 1970s. So they generally formed after second wave feminist movements and sought to reform men's positive in a society with new values. So the earliest men's movements were largely feminist, followed by a period of backlash agendas aimed to reclaiming rights that were thought to have been lost to women. So from the 1990s onward, men's movements became highly formalized and aimed at niche groups with various interests, which makes it difficult to claim that men's movements as a whole share any particular ideology other than their general focus on men in society. So the early feminist movement was fairly small and have more female than male supporters. But as the focus turned away from the supporting women toward on the male-focused agendas, overall participation has grown. Women are active in some organizations, although usually in small numbers. But many organizations either do not allow women as members or not allow them limited access to activities and trainings. So for more information, let's welcome Christian J. Hubak.
In continuation with Jane's report, I am Christian J. L. Hubak and will be discussing the 3 examples of working with men. These are MOVE, ERPAT, and Katropa. First is the MOVE, or the Men Opposed to Vow Everywhere. It is an organization that is designed for men who committed themselves to be actively involved in the elimination of vow. So, MOVE aims to advocate every man to stand for the rights of women. This organization is more on protecting women with their rights. Their goal is to eliminate the violence against women with the help of active participation of men. Next is the ERPAT. It stands for Enhancing and Reaffirming Paternal Abilities and Talents. ERPAT gives emphasis on the enrichment of knowledge, skills, attitudes of fathers in performing their paternal roles and responsibilities. Ingon pagani sila, if a father is well-mannered, the whole family becomes well-mannered. And if the families are well-mannered, the whole community too becomes well-mannered. So, ERPAT shows support in giving importance of right parenting with the father's abilities. Therefore, ERPAT's goal is to enhance every father's capabilities and roles in their respective family. The last one is the Katropa, or the kalalakin ang tinud-anay sa responsibilidad ug obligasyon sa pamilya. It mobilizes men as partners of women in women empowerment, responsible parenting, and gender equality. It aims to shape and change men as responsible individuals, parents, and partners for the development of their family and the community. In short, Katropa stands as partner of men to improve their thinking towards women and promote women in a good way. It also shows the support to men in becoming responsible fathers in their families. These 3 examples of working with men brings great impact not just in homes but in our society also. It gives knowledge in enlightening the minds of every man in our society to be not just a man, but a man with role in our community. That's all.